Hi. Last week in the episode, I had spoken briefly about the Thanneer Thurai Market and I had promised to tell you about the history of the place. Let's see what the story behind the Thanneer Thurai Market is. But before that, we need to know what the history of the Buckingham Canal is, because the canal and the market have a very strongly interlinked history. If you ask any average resident of the city as to how many rivers flow through Chennai, they'll say one, and its name is the Kuvam. Most people will have no idea that there are actually three rivers and a canal. The three rivers are the Koshasthalayar, the Kuvam, and the Adyar, all three flowing from west to east, and the Buckingham Canal flows from the north to the south. Unlike the previous three rivers, the Buckingham Canal is an artificial water body. It was constructed. And why was it constructed? To benefit the East India Company. Let us see what the story behind that is. As Chennai or Madras grew, it required a lot of construction activity. In those days, bricks had to be fired in ovens, and those ovens needed timber. By the 19th century, construction styles had changed, and the Indo-Saracenic form of architecture demanded exposed brick, which meant that the brick had to be fired to very high temperatures so that it would withstand Chennai weather, and that meant more requirement of firewood. Now, where was all this firewood to come from? The East India Company began encouraging the growth of casuarina on the north and the southern sides of the city. Even today, when you go down ECR, you will find a lot of casuarina groves. These are all remnants of that plantation which took place at that time. Now, once the trees had grown, they had to be brought into the city. You could do it by means of bullock carts, but that was not going to help. They needed water in order to transport the timber. And that was when, for the first time in 1803, a canal was dug connecting what we would today recognize as Basin Bridge with Ennore, and from there to the Pulicat Lake. The timber from all those areas was felled and brought by water to the Basin Bridge, where even today you find several streets named as Woodwharf. So you have Woodwharf Street 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and going on up to 8. There is no water body there, no sign of any boat, but the name Woodwharf Street still survives. This canal was dug by Basil Cochrane, who was an East India Company servant, and thereafter the company acquired it. It was completed around 1806, and later it was extended all the way up to Pulicat, from there up to the Krishna Delta, and then to the Godavari Basin as well. The timber had to be grown on the southern side of the city also. And by 1852, with Chennai requiring 98,000 tons of timber every year, extensive plantations began to come up on the south side. So in 1852, construction began of what was called the South Canal. And eventually, it would traverse an entire distance of 103 kilometers, going far deep into the south. There was no connection between the North Canal, which was called Cochrane's Canal or Clive's Canal, and the South Canal. The city lay in between. In the 1870s, a dreadful famine struck Madras Presidency. Thousands died, and several others began to come into the city in order to benefit from the free kitchens and the famine relief that was being provided over here. The governor at that time was the Duke of Buckingham and Chandos. He corresponded extensively with the imperial government in Calcutta. But the Viceroy, Lord Lytton, having come here and inspected what he claimed was to see what the famine was, refused to believe that there was a famine and did not offer any relief from Calcutta. The Duke here had to take up his own measures, and he came up with a work for relief idea. A canal would be dug through the city, connecting the north and the south canals, a distance of 8 kilometers. Work began in 1877 and proceeded slowly till almost the end of the 19th century. Eventually, it would connect the north and the south canals, making the Buckingham Canal one of the longest waterways in India, almost 796 kilometers. Once the canal was ready, goods began to arrive by boat. The entire mechanism of operating the waterway required an establishment. The high tide had to be harvested, and so locks came up at various places in the city. The locks would close and trap the high tide water. The boats would then traverse the distance between two locks. Then the next lock would close, and then the boat would go in, and so on. And this is how the boat would navigate from the northern to the southern side of the city. You still find lock nagars and lock streets at various parts in Chennai. They have no meaning today, but that was the reason why they were named like that. The goods that came included tiles, firewood, rope, jute, salt, rice, and so on and so forth. Several things came. But timber was really the bulk of what was coming, and they required storehouses. Even today in Thiruvallikeni, you will find that there is an old firewood Bankshall street and a new firewood Bankshall street just next to the Buckingham Canal. The word Bankshall itself comes from the Tamil word Pandagasale, which means a warehouse. Bankshall became a corruption of Pandagasale, and eventually in Calcutta there still is a Bankshall street where the Metropolitan Magistrates Court functions. The court even today is known as the Bankshall Court. Can you imagine a word from Madras going all the way up to Bengal and being commemorated in a street name over there? Similarly, Thanneer Thurai Market came up in order to cater to the Mylapore area. This was the brainchild of Sir V. Iyengar, a very popular lawyer, a prominent lawyer, later the first Indian to become the Advocate General, and later one of the judges of the High Court of Madras. When he became judge, he found that his income was diminished because he only received a judge's salary, whereas his lawyer's practice earned him a far higher income. He therefore resigned and went back to practicing as a lawyer. He passed away in 1908. Bashim Iyengar lived where the Kamadhenu Kalyana Mandapam and earlier the Kamadhenu Theatre stood. It was a property that extended to 100 grounds, each ground being 2,400 square feet, and he had his house Lakshmi Vilas there. He also bought up a lot of property on the eastern side, on the other side of Roypeta High Road, where he had a large house called Ambuja Vilas, and next to it came up Vembakam Gardens, and after that was this market. He envisioned it as a cooperative where the vegetable sellers themselves would participate in the administration of the market. The vegetables would come by boat, they would be offloaded onto hand-drawn carts and then brought to the market from where they would be sold. All went well till 1960s. There was a terrible cyclone and there were landslides on both sides of the Buckingham Canal. The government did nothing to rectify the landslides, and thereafter the Buckingham Canal steadily degenerated into a gutter. Thanneer Thurai Market lost its meaning. Vegetables now had to be brought by lorry, and that meant congestion, traffic stoppages, and so on and so forth. The whole area degraded. Eventually, a few years ago, the remaining vegetable sellers got together and sold the entire property to a real estate developer, and you have a multi-storied building standing over there. At one time, traveling by boat from here was a great experience. Subramanya Bharati, when an arrest warrant was served on him, went by train from Madras to Pondicherry to escape arrest. His printing press was dismantled and transported by boat on the Buckingham Canal to reach Pondicherry. Several years later, the poet Bharatidasan would travel with his friend on the same route, and he leaves behind a brilliant poem in Tamil, Mavalipura Chelavu, where he talks of how the sun set, the moon came up, and there was a lovely breeze, and he and his friend enjoyed the journey going on the boat to Mavalipuram. And then suddenly he turns around and he sees the boatmen in operation. The water level is low. One of them is towing the heavy boat by means of a rope, and the other man is propelling it by means of a stick at the rear end of the boat. And he laments at the effort that is required for pushing the vessel. Only a poet could have seen joy and sorrow in one journey. Today, of course, the Buckingham Canal is just sorrow. But we need to be aware that wherever it flows outside of Chennai, it is in wonderful condition. It's only in the city. And as the city expands, that the waterway is being degraded. So we are at fault as a people. Let us hope that better sense prevails and the canal once again gets restored to a pristine condition. See you later.